It doesn't matter how old or wise you are. Inside every man, there is a 10-year-old boy who is delighted by the most absurd and stupid of things. So today, I'm going to take a look at the Prometheus Class, a class of ship almost entirely designed to appeal to that 10-year-old boy in everyone. Hello everyone, this is Venom Geek Media here, and today I will be looking at the Prometheus Class. As I say, this is very much a ship that is designed to appeal to the juvenile or even childish sensibilities in us. It's just, look at those angles, look at the shape. It's a warship, it's a tactical cruiser, and it can split up into multiple sections and attack all at once and go bah, 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 bah. Make all the noises and sound effects. It's very, very cool and very, very dumb all at the same time. So, suffice to say that the Prometheus has been a controversial addition to Starfleet's roster. Featuring the ability to split into 3 parts is both a logical extension of what the Enterprise D was capable of with its source of separation, but it also raises the question, but why?
Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
And that is really the question we are going to be looking at today. Why is Prometheus? I think the first thing we should do is look at what we get with a Prometheus class. What is a Prometheus class? What are its features? What is it carrying? What actually is this ship when we really look at it? Okay, so together, a Prometheus forms a quad-nacelle medium cruiser. That's quite interesting because medium cruisers sort of died out back in the 23rd century. They were neither heavy cruisers nor light cruisers, and so they just fell out of favour. But it does actually fill a bit of a niche in the 24th century. It fills the role of an exploitation cruiser. While you've got frigates like the New Orleans and the Intrepid class, the trouble is that those only have dual nacelle warp drive, which is fine for relatively short stints, but it doesn't give you the ability to move at high warp for long periods of time. That's where the quad nacelle comes in. Quad nacelle designs are able to go faster for longer at the expense of a little bit of maneuverability. But by the Dominion War, the only quad nacelle ship Starfleet has, that's relatively modern at least, is the Cheyenne class. And that's it. There's nothing else that's going to be following it. It is just going to be a Cheyenne that is going to be going into the pursuit. And the Cheyenne is a decent ship, but it's a light cruiser by almost every measure. So to have something a little bit more substantial be able to follow it in the pursuit is actually quite handy. But the Prometheus, in terms of overall tonnage, it is nowhere near that of the heavy cruisers of the time, such as the Akira or the Luna class. So what we get here are 4 torpedo launchers and 10 phaser arrays. It's interesting to note that Prometheus has a very limited rear firing arc. In fact, it has no rear-facing torpedo launchers whatsoever, and its torpedoes are all in the forward arc. This creates a very aggressive profile, and given the idea of it being a pursuit ship, that does make a fair degree of sense. But even with the phaser arrays, the only phaser arrays that appear to be capable of shooting directly backwards are a pair of dorsal phasers located about amidships on the wedge section. But otherwise, it's really quite lacking in terms of rear-facing armament, so that does demonstrate a bit of a weak spot. There is good reason for why it is lacking that armament, and it's basically going to be tied to, of course, its party piece feature. So let's talk about the Prometheus as its multiple sections. Because as we all know, Prometheus's party piece is that it can separate into 3 independently operating sections, which is very interesting, and again, as I say, a logical extension of principle from the Galaxy class. Whether it's a good idea, well, we'll see. So the Alpha section comprises the saucer/wedge section, and interestingly, it has a pair of nacelles, very, very small nacelles. Really, I think all these nacelles are going to do is just sustain it in a warp field for a period. I don't think you're going to be able to get it up to high speeds with nacelles that small. and give it an ability to maneuver at warp as well. Again, it's not just coasting like the saucer section of a Galaxy class would. It is armed with 6 phaser arrays, that's 4 dorsal and 2 ventral, and then 4 torpedo launchers. This is a pretty potent armament. The beta section, of course, features the upper set of nacelles. It has its own set of torpedo launchers that are normally buried when the ship is fully assembled. So it too has 2 torpedo launchers, but it only has 4 phaser arrays. That's 2 dorsal, 2 ventral. And again, has a very, very, very limited rear arc. It's also worth pointing out that this is the section which takes the main shuttle bay. But it does, of course, have the 2 primary nacelles, which means that it is going to be capable of some very, very high warp speeds, and be able to cruise at a decent speed as well. And the same really goes for the Gamma section. If anything, the Gamma section might enjoy better warp speed acceleration because, of course, of how nacelle geometry works. In reality, the differential between the 2 sections is so minimal that I don't think it would really matter overall, but it is potentially a possibility that each section of the Prometheus does have its own little niche in terms of its warp speed performance, again thinking about its role as a pursuit vessel. The ventral section is actually quite well protected. It is armed with 8 phaser arrays and then another 2 torpedo tubes. So the total firepower of the Prometheus fully disassembled is in fact 18 phasers and 6 torpedo launchers, compared to the assembled version which features 4 torpedo launchers and 10 phasers. So, obviously then, the Prometheus is designed to separate and fight as a separate ship. Well, to an extent, yes, but it probably depends on what you're fighting. You see, while each of these sections is independently powered and has its own independent warp core, it's of course going to be more powerful when all 3 of those reactors are working together as part of one ship, rather than each having to power a completely separate ship. So when it comes to the tactical application of the separated Prometheus, is the separated Prometheus stronger? Well, you do get more firepower in that you will get more shots going out, and you do create for the enemy more targets to deal with. But equally, you have to counterbalance that by the shots that you're firing, at least from your phasers, are not going to be as powerful. Phasers, of course, draw their power from the warp core. So if you've only got one little warp core, destroyer-sized warp core, then that's a lot less power than 3 warp cores chained together. And the same goes for your shields. Each is going to have weaker shields than they would as a whole. So you are a weaker target as well. So of course, all 3 sections of the Prometheus have independent warp cores and independent computer cores. They need to in order to be remotely operated. It's of course naturally less efficient than just having one big core, and it's also a lot more resource intensive to build 3 smaller cores than to build one massive warp core. So we really then have to ask the question, well, okay, what are we getting for these resources that we are putting in? In terms of what we get 3 mixed performance destroyers. They're not necessarily all consistent. They are mixed performance destroyers, or we get 1 medium pursuit cruiser. And how much are we paying for that? It's probably going to cost about as much to build as it would 3 Sabres and 2 Intrepid class ships. Let's look at it this way. The destroyer sections, once separated into destroyer sections, the Prometheus is about as effective, probably even perhaps less effective than a Sabre class, and put together is slightly meaner and heavier than an Intrepid class, and definitely has some advantages over the Intrepid class, particularly when it comes to long-range, high-speed cruises, and it does rectify some of the issues found on the Intrepid class. It's iterative improvement, it's not exponential improvement. So really the question we now need to ask is, well, why would you want this? There are advantages to the Prometheus design. It allows you flexibility. You can operate it as either a cruiser or a squadron of destroyers. That's very handy. it gives you the ability for force projection. So a single Prometheus class is, of course, a squadron in and of itself. So you're able to take one ship and then suddenly make 3. It means you can be in more than one place at a time, which is quite a novel concept if you think about it. And it also grants you a degree of modularity and redundancy. Each section is completely independent, and thus you can replace these sections very easily. So say one of the ventral sections gets damaged, well, that's fine, you just replace it with a new ventral section. We'll end up with Theseus's Prometheus, as one section at a time is damaged or destroyed and replaced with another modular section, and on it will go. Of course, there is the downside to that each of these sections costing you more than an entire destroyer. So what kind of scenarios could we really apply the Prometheus in? Well, there's 2 real scenarios where I could really see the viability of the Prometheus. One of these is in dealing with an aggressive but weak neighbour. For example, the Talarians. The Talarians are extremely annoying. They like to raid your colonies, even though their ships are completely worthless and just frankly embarrassing to look at. It's not like you need a big top-of-the-line ship to deal with them, nor is the crew of the Prometheus going to be any more vulnerable by splitting into 3. And of course, knowing this, the Talarians would of course take the option of doing hit-and-run attacks, because Starfleet will probably only allocate a handful of ships to that area, and of course Starfleet can't be everywhere at once. Well, with the Prometheus, Starfleet can be everywhere at once, to an extent. So we get simultaneously a big cruiser that shows the flag, and we also get a squadron of destroyers that can cover more ground. Now, equally, you might just ask, well, why don't we just get the Texas class and do that for less? Then the other potential application for the Prometheus is wartime attrition. Essentially, the Prometheus can eject damaged or disabled sections of the ship and stay in the fight, and then when it comes to repairing, well, you just slap on a new section and off you go. This is a very interesting idea. It would certainly allow you a very rapid turnaround of damaged ships. You could, rather than having to source a part, you just get modular sections, and of course modular sections can be combined in a multitude of ways so that you can just get the ships back into the fight as quickly as possible. This will maybe work in the far future, but the technology is nowhere near there yet. That is very, very ambitious, and I don't really see that as being a likely possibility during the Dominion War. I think that is very much still in the realms of fantasy, but it is an interesting idea. In conclusion, the Prometheus is an interesting future concept, and it's fair to say that we are not there yet, not by a long shot. The Prometheus is really taking an interesting concept, such as the emergency saucer separation, and stretching it to its logical endpoint. And unfortunately, stretched that far, the concept snaps. And it's worth saying that there is a good reason that come the 25th century, we don't really see the multi-vector concept in large-scale use by any of the major powers. While an interesting experiment, the Prometheus is merely that, an experiment, which while it does have potential, and certainly does have a useful role in the Starfleet of the Dominion War, as I say, as a long-range pursuit vessel, but unfortunately for the Prometheus, it was meant to be so much more than that, and unfortunately, that's where it fell down. So, those are my thoughts, but what are yours? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you to my members for supporting the channel. My Navarks, Tully DT, Jeffrey Ballard, Rella, David Reeves, and Macross Shaffer, my loyal commanders, Philip Ty, Mark Philippe, Robert Sampson, Sean Farrell, Narata, Nathaniel Mead, Gabe Logan, Nicholas Walsh, JC Tech Wizard, Rizel 3D, Comsec, Bird Monster, Alcara Dreamer, Martin McConville, Joe G, Jeff Hallam, and James C. And I salute my Centurions, Pendlebury, Julian Arnott, Freedom Trooper, Ocolcatum Questo, Squadra Course, Athes Collection, John Nicole, Shermos, Greg Martin, LeBron Tissin Alma, Mazarine, Tobias Klein, and Marcus Hall. And I thank all my loyal sub-lieutenants. Thank you guys for supporting the channel, and I will see you all in the next video.